But one of the first things he says in his book is intelligence preparation in the battlefield. So he's coming up on his battlefield expertise, but he's like, first and foremost, you have to know the environment. Absolutely love it, because some people want to just swoop in and say, hey, this is how it's going to go. No, you have to know the environment that you're playing in. Where are you going into war? What country? What part of cyber? What part of healthcare? What part of plumbing, depending on who we're talking to?
Well, and the other thing, building on that, he has here in the first one about knowing your enemy then too. So know your environment, know your enemy. And I think that's really helpful for the consulting work I do, because so many times, especially in a large, complex industry like healthcare, and I think this is true across others I've worked in, public health, education, government, it's so easy to like blindly hate the other, right? I mean, in healthcare, my goodness, providers hate the insurance companies, right? Insurance companies hate the providers. Everybody hates the EMR companies. I won't mention it, but it's kind of epic, right? Nobody and they're viewed as like the great Satan, right? I left one job and I went to work for another type part of the industry. They say, oh, you're going to work for the great Satan, right? There's this inability to understand your adversaries in the sense of like, oh no, they're actually rational people making rational choices with the information and resources at their disposal. So if you think about them differently, like he talks about, it's actually really helpful. I really like that part.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. So he starts with know the environment, know the enemy, and then also know yourself. And I loved what he said in terms of knowing yourself, because this is kind of the onus of coaching. Is everyone can say, hey, I'm going to coach you in this direction, but in my coaching of others in growth areas, the real beauty is when you start to truly get to know yourself and all the baggage that comes along, because we might be working in an area, you can misread the situation because no two situations are the exact same. There's a lot of similarities, but you have to know the environment, the enemy, and yourself.
And I think that's important too, and that's where experience begins to make a difference, right? That's where, so many times it is important to have at least a member of your team who's really experienced, because they will at least, on the one hand, you have to have creative thinkers who maybe have less experience, so they're sort of willing to ask the naive questions that might actually get you the right answer. And on the other hand, you need people who have experience enough to be able to understand the nuances of what makes this situation different from maybe the one we saw as a company a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, things like that. So that's why I think it's important to have kind of this both and to your teams.